Had some more people join, I see. Welcome. So we've been going through this beautiful text by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, How to Practice, which essentially is the Four Noble Truths and His Holiness's commentary on how we Westerners can apply it in our lives. And so it's been really precious to have this time to unpack it every Wednesday and to have little monthly retreats where we can deepen our understanding, have a little more opportunity to practice together. So some of you were on Sunday, and it was a joy to have you there. We're at a stage in the text where I think it's good to step back and have a little more clarity about where we're going. So in the Four Noble Truths, that's the Buddha's first teaching. We just had the anniversary of that. His holy, the Buddha gave these teachings on the Four Noble Truths. His Holiness is offering this opportunity to explain a way to engage in this path, and really meaningful, practical methods. What's being presented here, though, is from a Mahayana perspective, and that is a bodhisattva's path. So prior to the bodhisattva path that was emphasized in more northern countries, such as developed more in India and then went to China, Tibet, and Japan. That's where Zen Buddhism and Chinese Pure Land traditions and the Tibetan tradition that I'm a part of really embraced and cultivated the tools to engage in a bodhisattva path. Theravada Buddhism, which you'll find throughout all of Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, Burma, so forth, Thailand. Theravada Buddhism is focused on the Pali Canon and the teachings in that Pali Canon, which are not emphasizing a bodhisattva path. They're emphasizing liberation, to become an arhat, to achieve nirvana. And so why it's relevant at this stage of the game is we went through these noble truths. We went through the truth of suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and into the Eightfold Path, which is where we are now. And His Holiness has given us an opportunity to engage with the Mahayana path, Bodhisattva path. So as we get into this portion, there's this deepening of a commitment to this path. And maybe you're new to Buddhism, maybe you don't know if you want to commit to something like that. So I want to make sure that, don't worry about all that. We're just going to describe these opportunities, and you'll have an opportunity to engage in a path that makes sense to you. We talk about three types of motivation that in Tibetan Buddhism, it's really emphasized these three scopes of motivation that people can engage in Dharma with. And one of them is very simple and straightforward, this first scope, which is I don't want to suffer, right? I want to, I want to be okay. I want to have a good rebirth, and, I don't want to suffer throughout multiple rebirths. I don't want to suffer in this lifetime. It's very tangible, and I want to engage in Dharma so that I can eliminate and live comfortably in this human form, and in the next life be at least another human, and continue that path of good rebirths, which is not unlike a Christian path, which is you'd like to go to heaven, right? You want to use this life to have a good next life and to go to heaven. So that's a totally appropriate motivation. I'm sure most of us could relate to that. Maybe we're not even sure about next life, but we certainly don't want to suffer in this life. So Buddhism is not about making samsara comfortable, though. Okay, so that's really key. There's a lot of Dharma, a lot of what's called Dharma, and teachings that are become quite popular here, especially in the West, that are very good at teaching us how to be a little more comfortable in samsara, in conditioned existence. And there are methods, and we have a lot of Western psychology. We have, types of mindfulness, and we have versions now of Buddhism, they call it, that can teach us how to eliminate a lot of suffering, just, here in this lifetime, not really focused on a complete liberation of all mental afflictions, but to really reduce the ones that we have. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in this Buddhist tradition, the goal is liberation, nirvana is liberation. So we can have a motivation to engage in this path and want to continue in a cycle of existence on a good trajectory, have a good rebirth, so forth, which would still fall in this first scope. Second one would be, I want to be liberated. So that now you're really getting into more of a Buddhist view. For Buddhism, we have these 4 seals, and the last of these seals is nirvana's peace, nirvana's liberation. That's what makes a Buddhist teaching. Ultimately, these 4 seals and this fourth one. And the Buddha taught liberation, taught complete liberation to all suffering, to be free of samsara, not to make samsara comfortable. So the second scope is emphasizing this liberation. And so that's really, you're going to see in the Pali Canon that Buddha taught liberation, taught how to be an arhat, taught how to achieve nirvana. And so Theravada Buddhism very much practices this. Buddha taught it, we can achieve liberation. The Noble Eightfold Path fits in that, Four Noble Truths. It's foundation. So it's foundational for Theravada, and it's foundation for Mahayana. So now I'm going to draw upon a teaching by Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a great Theravadan, credible teacher, scholar, practitioner. And he was describing these 2 paths of Arhat, path of a Bodhisattva, and this later teachings of Mahayanas. They talk about these second and third turnings of the wheel of Dharma. They came later, a little more emphasis than on a Bodhisattva path, Mahayana path. And I really like the way he brought it out. He said, in the teaching of the Buddha, what he was teaching is liberation, how to be liberated. So they practiced this, and people found liberation. They achieved becoming an arhat. But as Buddhism grew, and these incredible universities like Nalanda and so forth, incredible study and practitioners, well, they started to recognize there's a difference between achieving liberation and being a Buddha. The Buddha didn't teach how to be a Buddha. He taught how to be liberated. And so that question popped up, like, well, how do you achieve Buddhahood? And therein lies the Bodhisattva path, to achieve Buddhahood. And so these later practices that became refined and became emphasized then later as it faded from India with invasions and the wiping out of many of the Buddhist traditions in India, took root in China, Japan, Tibet, and primarily focused on this Bodhisattva path, how to become a Buddha, fully enlightened being. And so that's a Bodhisattva path. And the primary motivation there for Bodhisattvas is not just that I achieve liberation, but that I am moved by the suffering of all sentient beings, and I am engaging in this path of being a Buddha, so I can truly help all sentient beings. And as His Holiness pointed out earlier in the text, just as we were getting to this point, that that motivation, that recognition that I'm in prison of samsara, everyone else is in prison of samsara, that I'm not a lot of help in human form. I'm some help, right? If I have some money, I can donate. I can help fund some things. I can help feed some people. I can help, with some hospitals and soup kitchens, all types of things. I can be of help to a small number, but it's always temporary help. It's not going to relieve them from a cycle of rebirth and samsara. And I don't really have all the tools to really help them eliminate their suffering, but a Buddha would. And bodhisattvas on this path to Buddhahood have this capability. And so therein lies His Holiness saying, well, now we have an invitation. Do I want to engage in this path so I can be truly helpful? So this is where he's had these practices that we've engaged in about recognizing the suffering of others and recognizing our own self-cherishing and notice our natural tendency to want to be helpful. And herein lies the seeds of this great compassion that's already within us, but it's very obscured by our self-centeredness and our misperceptions of self and self-importance, and so forth. But this is naturally within us, and it's an ability to remove these obstacles, to recognize our Buddha nature, to wake up, to achieve Buddhahood. So therein lies this opportunity to set a different kind of motivation as we engage in a practice. So we just went through a refuge prayer, and I'll just bring it up again for us to take a look at. We've gone through a teaching on this a couple times. But unpacking it, I think, is really important, because as we say a prayer, engage in something, it's important to know what we're saying, why it's relevant to us, and see if it's meaningful to us or not. And again, we want to engage in practices that make sense to us, that fit our capabilities, our motivations, that are suitable for us. And so, as we say these, they either will resonate, be something you'll feel good about, or maybe not, and think, well, I'm much more interested in the second scope of really just eliminating suffering, achieving liberation from that suffering. So here, as I indicated, when we took refuge, we visualized the Buddha. And ultimately, it's really the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the three jewels of refuge, the spiritual community, but the teachings, the Dharma, our realizations on the path, the teachings on the path. That's our ultimate refuge. And these three kind of equated as the doctor, the Buddha's the doctor, the Dharma is the medicine, and this group of enlightened beings are the support, the nurses and radiologists and all the support for us to alleviate our symptoms, our mental afflictions. But the medicine's the Dharma. And we all have different dispositions there. And we're going to engage in the Dharma in ways that are meaningful for us, hopefully. So here, though, we visualize, well, what do I take refuge in? And to take refuge means something I can depend on. It's a place that's safe. Something I can really feel safe. I mean, you go for refuge from a storm, right? So can I depend on anything? Apparently, we'll get to this in a moment. So anyway, can I depend upon anything here in this worldly, interdependent existence that I have? Is there anything that I can depend on here? Can I depend on my partner, my children, my parents, my job, the environment that we live in? What's there that's dependable? What's something that's safe? What's something that's I can really lean into? If we look for it, it's going to be pretty hard to find anything in samsara. I would say impossible. This body will come and go. My friends will come and go. Jobs change. Here we are in a pandemic. We've got social unrest. prior to all this, we've had governments, shut down. We don't know how many days we'll be here. We don't know if our friends will be here. And one of these incredibly important causes to know of our suffering is that we keep trying to rely on things that are unreliable. Things are impermanent. Things cannot provide us the security and happiness that we are seeking. People, places, and things cannot provide that. And yet we'll spend a great deal of our life trying to make that be the case. Try to get the, good career, right partner, house, the things that I like to do, that I can have fun with, the traditions, that I can establish with my family and hope they stay. And if we look a little deeply at that, we're going to see that it's none of that's reliable, right? Friends, family, relatives, they come and go, and some have other issues, and sometimes families don't get along, and I'm changing, and my partner's changing, and the world's changing, and the town I live in is changing. I live in a smaller town, and you'll get to hear people, Carbondale's not like it used to be. It probably changed. LA, not like it used to be. And we start to recognize, as we look at this existence, the things that we keep trying to depend on, that we try to find security and stability. Well, there's nothing that's going to provide that. And it's actually the source of my suffering. My stress, worry, fear, anxieties are going to be much greater around my relationships, my work, my house, my stuff, and my friends. And that's really where I'm going to have a lot more stress and emotional turmoil, and trying to have the right kinds of friends, the right kind of life, the right kind of things, and really trying to arrange the world in a way that suits me. So that is a real terrible cycle of a lot of suffering. And so when we talk about refuge, we start to look, well, I don't think I can really depend on any of that. What can I rely upon? And here, can we rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the teachings that lead to no more suffering? Are they reliable? Are they dependable? And there has to be some sense of faith in them. And not faith that's built upon, it's in the book, and my friends are like that, and, the Dalai Lama seems pretty cool. But a faith that is built upon reason, built upon investigation, analysis. It holds up. It's reliable. And I can challenge and question it. And it does not require me to get caught up in a dogmatic, worldview, but rather a fresh analysis of, do these principles function to alleviate suffering in my life and in a path that can lead to no more suffering? And so as we take refuge, we like to be able to do it with that kind of faith that I've investigated, I've tested, I've tried this, and I don't need to believe in the whole path yet, but I can test some principles, right? And I can develop by testing, and that's the way to do things. You test things and maybe make that next step. Blind faith doesn't get us very far. So to this point in the text, we've had quite a few exercises around noting our attachments, noting the suffering that arises around them, noting the struggle and our grasping to people, places, and things. And so the first and second noble truths. And now we're at this, well, can I relieve myself of this suffering? So hopefully we've built up some sense that, oh, right, this is making sense. This does work. This is definitely worth, taking the next step so far. And each time we engage in these processes and engage in this path, we investigate, and then we'll either have the opportunity to engage a little more deeply, or we're not quite ready. So it's with that process that we come to a point like we are here, where His Holiness has brought us through a series of analysis that says, wow, here is a path of no more suffering, and is it fair that all these others are suffering? And am I moved to engage in a path, not merely for myself, but for all of them? So this practice on page 84 that he's asked us to do, and he's going to encourage us to do it more. So it's important, I think, as we do these things, that we kind of aware of what we're doing. Now, is it terrible to say some words like I take refuge, and maybe I'm not fully refuge? It's not terrible. I mean, there's an aspiration that I would like to engage in this path. But it's also okay if we're saying the refuge prayer and you're not ready to not say it. So I also happen to belong to some recovery programs, and there's this beautiful technique of praying for the willingness to want to pray. And I think that's a beautiful touch. In other words, it's saying, I'm not sure about all this, but I think there's something to it. Not quite ready to take refuge, maybe, or not quite ready to engage in Bodhisattva path, in which case I might engage in these words. Instead of saying I take refuge in Buddha and Dharma Sangha, I'm looking into taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And now I'll pull this up. So I'm looking into I'm interested in taking refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, concentration, and wisdom, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. That sounds like, it's really an aspirational piece. I'm asking, in His Holiness, I'm actually just repeating His Holiness' advice to deepen our personal motivation to engage in this for the benefit of all sentient beings, making a real heartfelt commitment to do so. But as we engage in this, it's valuable for you to engage in it in a way that's suitable for you, and don't just follow the pack. What I water grows, what I put in my mind stream's important. And so as I engage in some prayers on motivations and intentions, make them meaningful to you. So some of you, I know there's some names I have not seen before, and some people have been going through this for a little bit. I'm inviting at the beginning that we're engaging in this practice the way His Holiness is going to present it, because he's a Mahayana Buddhist, Bodhisattva. And so he's inviting this Bodhisattva view and the opportunity to engage in the path of Bodhisattva. The practices of generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, concentration, wisdom are the 6 perfections. They're the path of a Bodhisattva. So as I engage and I visualize the Buddha, I invite you to do the same. And I take refuge until I'm enlightened. And it's not in this lifetime, it's until I'm enlightened in this path, the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, the 3 jewels of refuge. It's something I feel I can rely upon, something I have a refuge in. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, choice, effort, concentration, wisdom, may attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. And then with each recitation, we deepen that. We're setting a motivation. We're saturating our mind and our activities, our karmic imprint. But it's valuable to say it in a way that makes sense to you. So I wanted to touch on that as we get ready to, if we have time, to then engage in the advices Holiness is going to give about maintaining this type of bodhisattva view and protecting it. So I do just want to pause there and see if anyone has any questions to this point yet. And sorry, I muted a little early. Okay, let me just take a sip of water. It looks like we have one question possibly. Nope, that was just mentioning. Okay, I didn't see any questions or hands, so just remember if there is a question, you can raise your hand anytime, really. Type in a question. Got about 9 minutes, so let's take a look at this text. So now His Holiness has given us this advice about how to take this refuge prayer, Bodhicitta, and now maintaining commitment for this lifetime. So I'm going to pop that up. Pop the text up so you can see it. I think I am. If I click on the right button. There we go. Nope. Boy. I'm getting there, I think. There we go. I'm going to be a technology wizard here one day. All right. So maintaining commitment for this lifetime. I'm talking about this lifetime. There's 4 practices aimed at keeping this altruism, this great compassion from deteriorating in this lifetime. So let's say I'm here, I'm dedicated to this path. And so first is increase your enthusiasm for becoming enlightened for the sake of all others by recalling again and again the benefits of doing so. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's incredibly practical. I think it's the way I'm going to put this. It is also something that falls to the wayside. I can be very inspired today. And a week from now, I'm not thinking about these benefits. There was a great talk that I heard 2 weeks ago. My mind moves on to other things. You may have noticed that, right? You may have noticed that your mind could move on to other things. Right? I read this book. Wow, I'm very inspired. Now I'm reading another book. And I had a great retreat. Now I'm back to the so-called real world and caught up in things. And so unless I bring to mind again and again my purpose, my meaning, and remind myself of this inspiration, remember what it feels like, and that here's a day that won't come again, and how meaningful this is. It fades. It just fades. And so there is an effort here and a practice of taking some time to remind ourselves of the incredible benefits of this opportunity. Second, then increase your concern for others by dividing the day and night into 3 periods each. And during those periods, take a little time from your day or rouse yourself from sleep to practice the 5-step visualization that we practiced on page 84. We spent a week with that. Even for just 5 minutes, this practice is very effective. It becomes a regular habit, like eating food at a certain time. Okay, so now he's really talking about people who are committed. So 3 sessions in the evening, 3 sessions during the day. And taking 5 minutes and doing that visualization, make it very habitual. It gives you another option, I think, here. If you cannot do it so often, visualize the steps 3 times in the morning and then 3 times in the evening. So you're still getting 6, but now they're longer. He's encouraging a 15-minute session. So instead of 5 minutes here and there, 3 5-minute sessions and 3 5-minute sessions. And so this is an opportunity then. And that exercise, if you haven't been with us, is just the short version of that is visualizing, a group of strangers, people we don't know that are suffering and struggling and hungry and afflicted, and we visualize them, one in front of us, and then on the other side of us we visualize ourself, our own ego, our self-centered ego, our afflicted states, self-centered, self-cherishing attitude, and observe, my self-centeredness and them, and notice our compassion going towards them, wanting to be helpful to them instead of feeding my own self-cherishing, self-centered, egotistic, self-afflicted state. And so it's broken down in these 5 steps, and a really rich practice as Holiness just keeps handing to us. He's mentioned it several times already. So you can see if you did that, there's a great opportunity and potential for compassion for others instead of feeding my own self-centeredness. And when we see that, we'll also see the danger in feeding our own self-centeredness. It does not create happiness for us. It doesn't help them either. 3, the next practice requires vigilance. In seeking to gain highest enlightenment for the sake of all beings, make sure not to mentally neglect the welfare of even one. So, big effort here. Big vigilance too. So what would it be like if, again, all beings, not just my friends, not just people I like, not just humans, that I recognize that they're all valuable, they all have Buddha nature, and I do not want to neglect even one. So, simple things. Last night I got some lettuce, and Brian's I was about to rinse it, and there's a little spider on there, and don't want to hurt the spider, so get it back out and get a little spider off, and put it back out in the garden. Things of that nature. People on the highways with us, right? We can neglect their welfare quite a bit, us and them. So there's all these opportunities where we can be a good neighbor, where we can be a good community member, where we could be another good member of this vast community of beings, which includes animals and insects and things. And to start bringing that mind to all beings. 4th one, we're going for it here. Try to accumulate the 2 forces of merit and wisdom as much as possible. To increase merit, engage willingly in virtuous activities like generosity and morality. To accumulate wisdom, you must come to understand the true way phenomena exist. That's what we talk about, emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality. Or dependent origination, is a good way of putting it. since this is a complicated topic, we will be exploring it at length in chapters 8 and 10. Suffice it to say here that it is helpful to reflect on how phenomena arise and exist, dependent on causes and conditions, so dependent, arising, origination. So maintaining in this lifetime, you can see there's a bit of an effort here. It's a worthwhile effort, though. The thing about these practices is we start where we are. So we get a little better, we grow them. And it's not necessary to do them perfectly right away. It's not necessary to, because we're not, right? All sentient beings. This is a big topic. So am I a little nicer than I was? Was I okay with the spider, but not so okay with my neighbor? This is a process that I am going to develop, and what I'm starting to develop and ripen is the value of others. And that's an immeasurable quality. That's going to eliminate a lot of suffering. So there's a process here. And then he's going to get into maintain commitment in future lifetimes. But that's where we'll leave it as we're at our time for right now. And what's happening here in this whole process, I think is very critical to be aware of, is what are the attitudes I am growing and cultivating in my mind stream? And all of these practices are moving me much more towards truth and understanding and compassion and kindness. Does my mind naturally go there? Does my mind go for what I want, how I'd like things to be, and what's fair, what's not fair for me? And so this real enemy of happiness is a self-centeredness, self-cherishing, grasping to myself in a particular way, and seeing the whole world through that. And these attitudes are allowing us to break through some of that grasping, and allowing us to let some different attitudes and thoughts into my mind, to start watering my mind stream with things that will alleviate suffering and help me engage in my life in a more full, compassionate, meaningful way. But if I'm not bringing them to mind, they don't come to mind. So I need to water my mind with these seeds. I need to nurture, tend to the garden of my mind. And I need to pull out the weeds of self-centeredness and my afflictive states. So here's the invitation then to engage in these practices. And again, maybe we're not at a stage where I'm fully all on board with that. But I might be at a stage where, well, I see the benefit in thinking of others. I see the benefit of engaging in a path that removes suffering. And I've seen the experience that some people have had, or I've tested it and I've gotten some benefit. And it's worthwhile for me to engage a little more and start watering these seeds, because that's how seeds grow. They don't grow very well on blind faith. There's not much nutrition there. There's a lot more nutrition in tested, thoughtful analysis and application of these teachings. So if I apply them and I benefit and I'm able to help others, well, then there's something to be said for looking a little more deeply and engaging in the path a little more. Okay, so I'm going to pause there, and very grateful to have had some time with you. We'll pick up the text next Wednesday at the same time, and we'll talk about these practices and then engaging them to maintain that, which is where he's going next. And ultimately, then we're going to get into the rest of this path of no more suffering. So let's go ahead and dedicate the merit and the wisdom that we've accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering. May they find their liberation. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to recognize our own Buddha nature, to achieve full enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. May we also dedicate this merit and wisdom for the long life of all spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions who are authentically teaching a path of no more suffering. May they live long, may their teachings flourish. And a special dedication for the long life of His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama, to whom we're receiving these incredible teachings. May he live long, and may the seeds of his wisdom and compassion ripen in all of us.